Hi everybody, and welcome to the final day of the working week. You're on TNT and you've dropped in to check the latest in Thailand's news. Let's see what we can dig out today. Now, not exactly sure what's going to happen over the next few days, hoping to squeeze in some time for a live program on Saturday morning, as we usually do. That'll be between 9 and 10 if it goes ahead. Also, grumpy old men. Steve's been very accommodating, making time, but I've been really busy. I've got guests checking in today. It's just very hard to try and find more than 24 hours in the day at the moment, and I apologise that I have been so busy, but hoping to squeeze in some time over the next few days. And Steve, as I said, has been very accommodating, trying to fit in with time, but we'll see how we go for the Sunday program. But a lot to talk about in the follow-up of that huge fireworks explosion on Wednesday. And we go to the Bangkok Post. First I want to go to this. Can't remember exactly where I saw it, but it's a before and after photo of the site where this fireworks factory was, and you can see there's absolutely nothing left. Even the house, it looks like a sort of a separate house, which is some 50 metres away, has just been completely obliterated by this fireworks blast. When these fireworks factories go up, they just totally obliterate everything around them. And we go to the BangkokPost.com. Victims of fireworks blast transferred to temple for identification. Ambulances on Thursday continued transporting the bodies from the factory, and autopsists at the temple will verify their identities before handing them over to their family members for religious ceremonies. And as of yesterday morning, the death toll from the explosion stood at 23, including 7 women, 16 men. The Public Health Ministry notes that the figure could rise as the exact number of workers and individuals present at the factory during the blast remains uncertain. The owner survived as he was delivering the product to customers. More about him a little bit later. And the explosion occurred at 3:30 p.m, spreading debris in a radius of 100 metres, and a loud sound was heard about a kilometre away from the scene. And records show there were 24 explosions at fireworks factories and warehouses over the 15 years between 2008 and 2023, with each incident causing extensive damage, including many deaths and injuries. The Calcite English Facebook page reports that among the 23 killed during the explosion of a fireworks factory were 2 local rescue volunteers. They were identified as Tanakorn Wachara Pim Monmit and Miss Waranya Silao. Again, I'm sorry for my Thai pronunciation, but both volunteered at a local rescue foundation of Suphon Buri. Many condolences were made on social media. And from Thai PBS World, survivors tell of tragic losses in firecracker factory explosion, and 2 people happy to have survived a mass blast at a firecracker factory in Suphon Buri say they're sad over the loss of many of their family members and relatives in the accident, which claimed 23 lives. Nanfom Bunklom said she left the factory shortly before the explosion because one of her sons needed some money and had insisted that she go home to give it to him. Usually, she said, he would visit the factory to get the money, but yesterday he changed his mind. He called me repeatedly, so I left the factory for home. People working in the factory were local residents, and many were from the same family, hitting the community hard. Meanwhile, the 56-year-old owner of the factory said he lost his wife and son in the blast. He said, "I'm shocked and speechless, not only because the factory was destroyed and many people died, but also because I lost family members too. I have to comfort many families who lost their loved ones, while I'm still shocked by the tragedy." Another article in Thai PBS World says calls for overhaul of outdated firework factory licensing laws after the Suphon Buri tragedy, and representatives of the Interior Ministry and Industrial Works Department will be invited for a discussion about amending the outdated laws governing the licensing of firework factories. According to a House Industrial Affairs Committee chairman, he said that it's time for the obsolete law to be updated for public safety. And according to the Factory Act, the setting up of a facility which hires fewer than 50 people or is equipped with machinery under 50 horsepower does not require a licence from the Industrial Works Department. And since most firework factories employ fewer than 50 people or are equipped with small machinery, they're beyond the control of the Industrial Works Department. So it looks like it just slips through the cracks. I predict that that's going to be fixed up very quickly. But some interesting insights from the people who survived that particular tragedy. Friday's program, a fairly busy cafe. We've just had the arrival of about 30 cyclists, so expect a bit of a coffee machine noise in the background. And Thai PBS World reporting that the Thai PM stays busy in Switzerland. The Prime Minister Srettha has kept Thais well informed about his activities at Davos to attend the World Economic Forum over the past week. In the messages he shared details of his discussions with other guests, including executives of international organisations and companies, as well as leaders of participating countries. And Srettha promised his government's ambitious landbridge mega project in southern Thailand as a major selling point. And he's had conversations with the Adani Group, a prominent Indian firm specialising in port and airport development. Also Dubai Port World, an Emirati multinational logistics company, also wants to visit the site and study the details of the project soon. Another of the highlights, he said, was a meeting with Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates. And he says, my hope is to have a mega company invest and open a data centre in Thailand to make it a regional data centre. Probably means data hub. Therefore, I would not miss an opportunity to present Thailand's potential and the possibility of opening a Microsoft data centre in Thailand to Gates. Well, apart from the data centre, obviously he's there trying to flog this land bridge, but there seems to be a little bit of winding back going on back home. And we go to nationthailand.com. Government may reconsider land bridge project if investment won't be worth it. And the government may review its land bridge project if an ongoing feasibility study finds that it's not worth the massive investment of 1 trillion baht. This from the Deputy Transport Minister, and she was responding to questions from opposition MPs regarding the mega project during a parliamentary meeting. A lot of us looking at these canal and land bridge projects over the last 10 years as they've occasionally surfaced and been reported think that this land bridge just doesn't seem to add up. Not that I'm any expert, but you've got ports on either side of the Isthmus of Kra, you've got highways, you've got infrastructure, you've got all the terminals and the machinery to lift the containers off one end and put them back on the other, plus all the time involved, or just cut a canal through the middle of the Isthmus of Kra and the same boat can just travel all the way through. It seems to make a lot more sense to a lot of us, but apparently the government still is pushing this land bridge project. The land bridge project involves the construction of deep sea ports in Chumpon and Ranong provinces and railway and highway links between the two ports, connecting the Gulf of Thailand and the Andaman Sea. And according to the Deputy Transport Minister, the consultancy will look into all aspects in their study on the worthiness of investment in this large project. Prospective investors will also conduct their own feasibility studies. If they find it's not worthwhile, they will not invest. If the study finds the project is impossible, we must review it. The study involves 10 areas covering logistics system, port design, environmental impacts, investment pattern, concerns of residents, fishermen and joint ventures. The opposition's concerns would also be taken into consideration. And an opposition MP for the Move Forward Party asked the Deputy Transport Minister about such matters as shipping lines expected to use the land bridge, estimated number of container ships, reduced shipping costs and worthiness of investment when compared to the Malacca Strait. Malacca Strait being the current way that boats approaching the Andaman Sea would then dip down the Malacca Strait under Singapore and then up into the South China Sea, which they've been doing for centuries. And he cited the result of a study by the National Economic and Social Development Council 2 years ago that a landbridge project was not worth the investment and that the project size should be reduced. My prediction is that we're going to find a report saying it's just not worthwhile and it won't go ahead, but I can also guarantee that the project will come up again in some future government or another decade. Very, very busy morning here at Chip Fair Lele at the cafe along the Taimang Road, the beach road. We go to the next story from PattayaMail.com. Surrogacy for gay couples promoted to solve Thai fertility crisis. And anticipating the legalisation of gay marriage later this year, the Thai Health Department boss is advocating revision of the Surrogacy Act to allow homosexual couples to adopt a baby via a surrogate mother. And the Director General said the move was part of her recommendations to tackle the falling birth rate in Thailand, where annual deaths now exceed births. And Thailand's facing the prospect of a severe shortage of Indigenous employees and intense international competition for more guest workers from neighbouring countries. And Thailand's laws are now strict after a slew of scandals in the past where Thai doctors and Chinese agents were involved in international surrogacy syndicates. Current legislation bans all commercial surrogacy and largely limits heterosexual couples who have been married at least 3 years, at least one of whom must be a Thai national, to having the services of a female relative who is willing to carry and give birth to the baby solely for altruistic reasons. And all other avenues, such as surrogacy tourism or international or cross-border surrogacy, are banned, as is homosexuality in this context. And this is not just a matter of fertility, but also of national security, she said. Assuming that gay marriage soon becomes legal in Thailand, which is very likely in view of the support by major political parties, this article says the surrogacy issue is one of the many diverse subjects, including pensions and wills, which will require attention in numerous laws and directives, often dating back decades. So a bit of thinking outside the square there. Now we go to this next story from Nation Thailand. Industry Ministry affirms Panga can produce 14.8 million tonnes of lithium. Hang on, I live in Panga. And the Industry Ministry has affirmed that 2 large prospective mineral sites in Panga province could produce up to 14.8 million tonnes of lithium, which would support Thailand's goal to become an EV hub. And they've confirmed the capacities of the Ruang Kiat and the Bang Etu sites in Panga. So, of course, I rushed to the map to try and find out where these 2 locations were. And, in fact, it's in the Takua Pass district here in Panga, which is not the Thai Muang district. So it's sort of south and east of where I live at the moment here at Thai Muang. And the findings of high lithium content in Panga makes Thailand the country with the 3rd largest lithium resources after Bolivia and Argentina. And she said the large resources of lithium would convince more EV manufacturers to use Thailand as their manufacturing base for exports. Just have to wait and see exactly what's going to happen with that. I imagine a story like that will probably make international press. Let's go to this story, reported by Associated Press. A court of appeals in Thailand hands an activist a 50-year prison term for insulting the monarchy. The Court of Appeals in Thailand has handed a political activist what's believed to be a record sentence for the criminal offence of insulting the monarchy, giving him a 50-year prison term after finding him guilty of 25 violations of the law. And the 30-year-old had originally been sentenced last year to 28 years in prison by the provincial court in the northern province of Chiang Rai for 14 of 27 posts on Facebook for which he was charged. And he was found guilty by the Northern Region Court of Appeals in Chiang Rai on Thursday, not just in the 14 cases but also in 11 of the 13 cases for which the lower court had acquitted him. And the Court of Appeal sentenced him to an additional 22 years in prison, bringing his total to 50 years. Technically, he'd been given a prison sentence of 75 years, but the sentence was cut by 1/3 in acknowledgement of his cooperation in the legal proceedings. Well, given that he's already 30, really those numbers just a technicality. But indeed, given a 50-year sentence for insulting the head of state of Thailand. And time to head to Pattaya, and we're reporting from the PattayaNews.com. And 2 foreign tourists arrested on Pattaya Beach for refusing to pay for beach chairs. Yeah, you've got to pay for those beach chairs that are strewn all over Thailand's beaches. And it happened back on January the 18th, where 2 unidentified foreign tourists were arrested for violating the property of umbrella and beach bed operators. And according to witnesses, the 2 men, one of who was shirtless and described as aggressive and uncooperative, had reportedly tried to sit down on beach chairs and immediately been informed by the owners of the beach bed area that the chairs were a paid service and that the men needed to pay to use them. The men refused and began an intense verbal argument with the umbrella chair operators, leading to police and municipality officers being called to the scene near the Royal Garden Mall. Unfortunately, the men were still uncooperative and argumentative with police and still refused to pay to use the beach chairs. One of the men also allegedly attempted to leave the scene without resolving the conflict. I thought leaving the scene would have resolved the conflict, unless there was an extended argy-bargy where they couldn't rent out those chairs in the meantime. Apparently they headed to the Royal Garden Mall nearby. As a result, the men were arrested and taken to the Pattaya police station to face further legal charges. And the Pattaya News notes the chair price is generally between 50 and 100 baht, depending on the type of chair used, and the name, ages and nationalities of the men arrested were not released by relevant police. So what are you paying for a sun lounge these days? I remember about 10 years ago back in Phuket, used to pay around 100 baht. I would have thought the price would have been a bit more these days. So tell us what you're paying for one of those ubiquitous white plastic tatty old sun lounges strewn along Thailand's beaches. I would have thought it would have been a bit more than 50 to 100 baht these days. But with that, thank you for watching. Hopefully you're a bit more up to date. As I said, I'm really not sure what's going to be happening over the next 2 days for programs. I'll do my best to make sure we can do a live program. I'll also try and fit in with Steve and get a Grumpy Old Men program out for Sunday. In the meantime, thank you for watching. Have a fantastic Friday. I look forward to seeing you next time.